I'm Erin and welcome to another video. This one is going to be my first reading vlog that I'm going to do, and it's going to be on Kindred, which I've been trying to work my way through this one for a little while, and it is about Neanderthals, and it is, yes, Neanderthal Life, Love, Death, and Art by Rebecca Ragg Sykes. And I thought it would be fun to do a reading vlog and talk, share some of my thoughts on it. It's a topic that I've been really interested in for a while. It's not what I study in school or even related at all, but it is a topic that has always interested me. Just generally, human evolution, super cool, just kind of amazing. And the Neanderthal story and history is kind of a big part of explaining and understanding human evolution. So I have been super interested in this topic. This book is the newest out on Neanderthals that I know of. There's a couple others though, and I'm gonna put some links and references below for the things that I mention. So yeah, all right, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so just want to pop in and talk a little bit about what I've read so far. I'm 5 chapters in, and I'm not sure really how to do this. I've never done a reading vlog, but I thought I would just highlight some of the key, especially since nonfiction. So I'm definitely going to talk about some of the things in here, but I feel like it's not really spoilery because I don't know. I'm not spoiling a plot. I will say, just from the first 5 chapters, this book is very detailed. So I would recommend it if the subject really interests you, but I do think there's some chapters that really get into skeletal structure and the tools they use, but very much more detailed than I was expecting it to be. So very interesting because I'm super interested in it, but just be warned, I will definitely talk more about this at the end. Okay, so just some highlights so far. If you aren't familiar with this time period, they were around for about 350,000 years up until about 40,000 years ago, which is pretty recent. And definitely would have overlapped with humans for quite a number of years. So the other thing that I found was kind of cool and goes along with this whole multiple hominids around, so they've found at least 20 different hominin species that have existed in the past 3.5 million years, which seems like a long time. It is a long time, but that's also quite a number, and a lot of those I'm sure overlapped. And yeah, I just think it's crazy that it's a lot of other could have been almost human or very human traits. Some other things from this book is Neanderthals very much used tools similar to very early humans as well. Rocks, they napped specific rocks for specific use. So even to the point where they would make serrations like a serrated knife, basically, stuff like that. Like some other things, like I think that just are surprising and why this is really interesting is just that there's a lot more similarities between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens than I think a lot of people originally thought, given especially when they were discovered and the worldviews at the time. It was definitely not thought that they were like as near the same cognitive level as Homo sapiens, but they actually have found that both physically and cognitively, like very similar developmental times. Their like brains and skulls were really similar, except for two things. I have another little printout. The chin in Homo sapiens is like a little bit longer, and in Neanderthals, that occipital bun is like a little more protruding, which I think we'll get into more later. But yeah, really similar. And it's really cool how they discover all these things using like imaging and the imprint of the brain in the Neanderthal skulls that they find. So yeah, so other things like in terms of injury and health issues, pretty like on par with humans. Like they found some injuries and some like in some clear like accidents, or even one like actual like assault, which is, side note, really interesting to think about if you've seen this show Bones, like how much they can tell just from looking at the bones. I think that's really cool. But all of that is very similar and in line with what they have found in Homo sapiens, which is us humans. And so yeah, so very much more similar, I think, than a lot of people initially think. The other thing is that I think a lot of people associate Neanderthals with like Ice Age or like really cold environments. And while they have survived similar climates, something that was highlighted in chapter 5 here was just that like Neanderthals actually lived through like warming and cooling of the environment. So they're actually like pretty hardy and were able to live through a lot of different changes in climate. And they actually lived in a lot of different areas, even far like south towards Mediterranean, but basically in almost every climate except like true wetlands and then really cold Arctic environments. So everywhere else, woodland, grassland, everywhere. Yeah, so just some more thoughts. I'm gonna get back to reading. Hopefully it's not too boring, but I think it's really interesting and we will see where we go. Okay, look at this little baby girl. So cute. You're so cute. This is Hazel. She's my dog and she's so cute. Anyway, I think I'm gonna hang out with Hazel the rest of today, and then we're gonna go to a coffee shop tomorrow morning and do some more reading. So yeah, probably read something else tonight. I really want to start Olga Dies Dreaming, so might do that. Okay, so I just finished chapter 10, and I'm gonna be honest, a little bit of a slog lately. The chapters are just so dense. So the last 5 chapters have just been a solid deep dive into Neanderthal life. Tools, food they ate, where they stayed, where they moved, and yeah, so really dense. But I wanted to say a few things. I'm trying to figure out how to do these videos in terms of like how much science to talk about and what to actually highlight. So one of the big things that I feel like is just like more accessible and kind of a bigger takeaway from this is just generally highlighting that it's pretty incredible, like both how much we know and can figure out through different scientific methods, and how like little we know and how much there still is to discover. So that's definitely been highlighted for me in this, that it's just there's so much new technology that has allowed us to see such crazy things, and like figure out exactly like how tools were used, based on how like different marks on the bones and actual and like basically see that there was like a variety of tools created. And this is like same the other thing that's been highlighted, which I think I said before too, but how similar the Neanderthals were to Homo sapiens, especially at this time, and how like I think a lot of these things can be applied to how hunter-gatherer communities in Homo sapiens survived. So basically this just highlighted these scientific observations of their lifestyles, including so things like their weight, like where their waste was stored from hunting, and where stone tools were moved at different times and to different places, and kind of how all of that and how all of that indicates how systematic they were, and all this evidence for like their cognitive ability and potential social structures. So yeah, very detailed and in-depth. Really interesting if you're interested in this topic, and I'm definitely glad I am reading it, but I'm not sure that I would recommend it to the like everyday public that just wants to kind of learn a lot of surface level stuff and not go super detailed, because it was almost too detailed even for me. So yeah. So the other thing that I feel like these chapters have really highlighted is just this the ability for kind of the scientific community to provide evidence for different things that lead to potential conclusions or speculations about a species. So I haven't talked a lot about that, and again, it's super detailed, but like an example of this, and it is really cool to read about, and that where we've come with science is kind of super crazy and impressive. And one of the examples in here was that for a long time, it was thought that Neanderthals like just hunted big game, basically. That's not necessarily true. They're also hunted a lot of smaller animals and even foraged. And there's like further evidence for them eating plants. Not only does just like carnivores, it depends on physiology, but carnivores, specifically Homo sapiens, can be susceptible to what's called protein poisoning, where basically you get too much protein and not enough fats and carbohydrates. And so that's one thing. So it's likely, like we know that they ate a lot of meat because of the high levels of nitrogen isotope in their bones. And that's basically just an indication of any carnivore. Like for the eutrophic levels, the higher the ratio of nitrogen is. So we know they ate a lot of meat, but we know that they couldn't probably have just eaten meat. So one of the really cool evidence for them eating plants is that they're able to look at the abrasions on molars, and they can actually tell molars that have eaten plants or eat a lot more vegetation than molars that do not, like even within groups of Neanderthals. So I thought that was kind of cool. And yeah, trying not to go like too detailed into the science, but also share some thoughts on some of the things that I'm reading about. So hopefully it's not too overwhelming or not enough. Let me know. for now, I'm just gonna go get some lunch and try to continue reading. I can kind of only get through 1 or 2 chapters a day because it's so dense, but I'm hoping to finish it up next week. So I'll check in a little bit. Okay, taking a break and going on a walk. Now I'm also a pretty decent way through Olga Dies Dreaming, and it's so good. I really love it. It's about Olga, who is a wedding planner, and her brother. Yes, psyched to get back to reading that tonight and then keep on reading Kindred tomorrow. So. Olga Dies Dreaming. Such a great book. They're talking about the gentrification of some neighborhoods in New York City right now. And yeah, pretty powerful. So I don't think I mentioned too much before, but Olga and Pedro are Puerto Rican, and both of them living in different aspects of affluent white America. We will see, but I am definitely already loving it. So, nice break from the dense nonfiction that is Kindred. Beginning of each chapter, there's these little paragraphs that kind of give you insight into what life was like at this time in such like a personal way, and I just think it's a really nice touch that really gives life to this time, even though it was like hundreds, thousands of years ago. Okay, I'm having one of those moments where I just want to read everything, and yeah, I feel like, so I'm in the middle of this and in the middle of Kindred, and hopefully I'll be done with that tomorrow and finish off this vlog. But like, I want to read both of these so bad. They just came the other day and I just want to read them so bad, but I'm also halfway through 1Q84. Just like, ever have those moments where you just like want to read everything? There's too many books to read, and I love it and also hate it because I can't read them all at once. Struggles, book struggles, for real. So I finally finished this book. It took me forever, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's a topic that I find really interesting, just thinking about evolution, what it means to be human, but also like our relationship to other species, both past and present, and this definitely did that, and had some really interesting tie-ins at the end. The last 6 chapters were actually my favorite. I found them to be the most interesting by far and covered a wide range of topics. They were also a little more speculative, which is kind of where it gets interesting and tricky in science writing, but I thought it was really well done. The author talked about language and art in Neanderthal culture and evidence for that in different areas, and definitely capability for language and likelihood of some sort of language, although we can definitely not be super specific or know exactly what that looked like at least right now. And the other thing I emphasized, which is I mentioned before, is just how far technology has come and what we were able to find out, but also we're missing a huge chunk of a lot of things. So people are often curious about their extinction or like the demise of the Neanderthals, and I think that's definitely a very interesting question that the author also brought up, that is like largely because we are often very interested and frightened by our own mortality and inevitable death and annihilation of our species, and our soul also like our desire to be special. But if anything, this book just like showed how many more similarities there are than we thought originally. So yeah, I found the last section to be the most interesting for a variety of reasons, but also it goes into, I think chapter like 14 through 16 were particularly favorites, and I just was the most interested. But they talk a lot more about genomics, and once that was developed, our ability to look at how Neanderthals had definitely interbred with humans and our Homo sapiens, and the genetic evidence for that. And also that was able to, from that we were able to gain a lot of knowledge on like movement of both species. Yeah, but just like how much that knowledge and ability to sequence genomes was like able to further our knowledge of so many things, this included. But yeah, it talks a lot about that, a lot about another species, the Denisovans. I don't want to get too nitty-gritty into things, but I just found those chapters definitely to be the most informative for me. And then how like further research and like this basically how modern Homo sapiens contain up to like 2 to 3% Neanderthal DNA, and kind of what that means. More specifically, we don't know like exactly what things, you know, we have, or what specific genes are from that. We don't know. That's like kind of in process, and where a lot of scientific research is going right now. There's a lot of super interesting stuff going on. So it is like such a small percentage, so like definitely not in very huge ways has it impacted us. But there are some really specific examples that I think are really interesting. Another thing that people find really interesting, and that is still a huge mystery, is actually like the disappearance and like extinction of Neanderthals. Again, some DNA is now in modern humans, so in a sense they kind of did make it into present day, but they didn't completely hybridize for sure. And researchers don't really know exactly what happened. It's probably a mix of things, or it's probably an accumulation of different issues and problems at the time, including climate. And I think I mentioned earlier, they definitely were more adaptable than I think originally given credit for, but there could have still been major climate changes. There was a volcanic eruption around the time of their disappearance that could likely have led to factors like lack of prey, harsh environmental conditions that could have contributed, but again, it was likely a variety of different things. And that definitely was pointed out in this book. She actually didn't go super detailed into like all the different theories around extinction. She did mention, because she wrote it, kind of finished it at the end of at the beginning of the pandemic, is that that's also a possibility, some sort of pathogen, but likely a variety of things that led to their extinction. So the last chapter, there were a lot of really interesting things that the author talked about. One of them was somebody who I'd never heard of in history, Samuel Jules Celestine Edwards, who was a Black public lecturer and student who was lecturing during the late 1800s, around a time like when theories of evolution were beginning, but still had a lot of issues. And he had said in one of his lectures that all peoples of the earth had a common origin and were therefore united in equal capacity for intelligence, civilization, and humanity. And a lot of this book pointed out things like that, just in that like Neanderthal is very similar to humans, but we all stem from like a common origin, and we all have so much more in common, I think, than originally realized. But the chapter definitely pointed out and emphasized just how early evolution theories use very racist reasoning and theory, often ignoring obvious scientific observation to basically justify further racist behavior, basically colonization and slavery, and persecution of many people. So science has gone some really negative ways too, but there were people like Edwards who basically kind of already knew, had a feeling about what was going on. So I thought that was really a good thing to include, considering especially a lot of like early belief in what Neanderthals was like was often based on these like same principles of being like other and not as good, and humans are better, particularly Western white. Yeah, so I thought it was just like a really good chapter to include. It's something I want to read more about. I actually have a book on my shelf that kind of goes into that more, but I thought it was really interesting to especially include this in this book. And then the epilogue, which I also just wanted to mention because that kind of tied it all in also with climate change and the current state of the world and potential problems and where we're going. So I thought that was also a really important thing to include. And yeah, again, I really love these chapters because I think it also just like makes you think about humanity, about purpose. And I really love books that like make me question and think about the future, like our purpose here, and yeah, existential stuff. So I really loved it, but don't necessarily recommend it for everyone. I think the beginning or the middle was just so dense and kind of dry. Yeah, but here's the first reading vlog. We'll see how this goes. I'm definitely gonna do my next one's gonna be not nearly as dense a book, and I will just occasionally have one of these more nonfiction, dense, information heavy vlogs. So I hope you enjoy and have a great day. Bye.